Lung cancer all cancer is a dreadful disease and really devastates families. Whether you're cured or not, the having of a lung cancer is a terrible diagnosis. For lung cancer itself, of course, very difficult to smoke. We pick it up when it's usually advanced, stage 3 or stage 4, and the cure rate is very low. You need, in the past, chemotherapy. Now you may need chemotherapy and immunotherapy. And even should you, with advanced disease, have a long remission, you will be largely on treatment for the rest of your life. And that, of course, is devastating for families and very expensive for health services. There's many mistakes made over understanding tobacco smoking. The first is that, of course, you are addicted to the smoke, but in fact what you're addicted to is the nicotine. So cigarettes contain nicotine. As the cigarette burns and combusts, you obtain the nicotine that you need. It comes to a high peak and it gives you all the satisfaction that nicotine does. The problem is, as a cigarette combusts, as it burns, it releases an awful lot of particles and an incredible number of carcinogens. So what happens is you need the nicotine, and by the time you develop lung cancer, you have been habituated to cigarette smoking, usually for some years, and you can't drop the nicotine. And what brought me into trying to understand smoking was the fact that, of course, 8 or 9 out of 10 patients who come through the door of an oncologist in a lung cancer clinic are smokers. Now, the one thing we cannot do is blame them for that smoking. They've obtained the nicotine for a number of years. They can't suddenly drop it. You can't blame them. Nevertheless, I would agree with you. It's absolutely shocking that you can't quit when you really have to. All health professionals and the whole of the community would ask you to quit. If you're a smoker, don't smoke. We know that that's difficult. That once you become used to smoke, or nicotine, once you become used to the nicotine in smoke, you continue to want the nicotine and indeed need the nicotine. So it's the old short saying was, you smoke for the nicotine, but you die of the smoke. So are there alternatives that can supply nicotine to those who need it without or with much reduced harm? And the answer, I believe, is yes, there is, and there are a number of products, and some with a very long track record that can prove it. Oh, that's a very good question. So, e-cigarettes you would usually know as vapes. They contain a nicotine-containing liquid. That nicotine may well have come from a tobacco plant in the past, but you don't combust in any way. You don't really have smoke. So when you see a vape and you see vapor, it's really water vapor and glyceraldehyde. It's not really smoke. It looks like smoke, but it isn't smoke. A heated tobacco product is a product which enables the nicotine to come out of the tobacco by heating, but no combustion. You have no smoke in a heated tobacco product. The other alternative is an oral tobacco product, and perhaps the best known of those is snus, which has been in use in Sweden for over 50 years. So we do have an incredible knowledge about nicotine-containing substitutes for smoking, for combustion. So again, we say quit, and we set up quit clinics. We give you nicotine replacement therapy, chewing gums, patches, sprays. They do help. But what we know from a huge experience is that nicotine replacement therapy helps a very small amount. And if you look at the end of a year of really a concerted effort of trying to ask you to quit with this help, it's a small percentage of benefit, and people revert back to combustion. So what you have with these other products is they more completely mimic that of a smoke, that of a combustion. You get a peak of nicotine, which reproduces what you would get from a cigarette, and you have more paraphernalia. You go out for a vape, you go out for a heated tobacco product, you have more of the normal interactions that go with smoking. So what we know with combustible cigarettes is that for those with higher degrees, for those in what you might call white-collar jobs, we really had quite an effect on reducing the amount of smoking. But for those who are doing manual jobs, for those in many European countries, they're unable to quit, and their smoking rate is still very, very high. What the UK has done is it's had a government body which is really quite independent, called Public Health England. They have looked at all the data, and they have encouraged us, if we cannot quit, or you are unwilling to quit, to move towards smoke-free products, be they vaping or be they heated tobacco products. And we're so convinced about the benefit that we are even allowing free product to be given to smokers to enable them to quit and help them to quit, and certainly move away from combustion. So we are completely convinced that we will see a difference in illness rates, in sickness rates, in cancer rates, in cardiovascular rates, if we can move you away from the toxicity of smoke. Lifestyle medicine is something that we all now are beginning to understand. So we all know that there's a cause and effect. Nicotine is not a drug that causes cancer. Nicotine is a drug that does calm and that does give you satisfaction and releases dopamine, releases pleasure. People have quite hard lives, and drugs like nicotine have been in use, as you well know, since Sir Walter Raleigh brought them back to the UK, certainly, which was a very long time ago. They have an effect, and they have, for some people, a need. So when you look at the world, as you've rightly said today, there's over 1 billion smokers. If you do nothing, you will end up with 8% having lung cancer. I'm not talking about esophageal cancer, I'm not talking about bladder cancer, kidney cancer, gastric cancer. I'm talking about just one simple cancer, lung cancer. 8% of all smokers will end up with cancer. You're looking at 80 million lung cancers. Now, this is an overwhelming burden, and if you look in many nations, of course, they have very young populations. So if you're looking at a nation where 50% of the population is under 25, your burden is going to be massive, even though it looks as though it's 23%. You still are going to have a massive burden as a nation. So what can you do? Run your quit smoking clinics. But I think, like Public Health England and many nations, and just to say as an oncologist, we usually rely very heavily on the FDA for advising us what drugs are useful, what drugs aren't useful. Here they have come out very clearly with saying that they will give a modified risk tobacco product license for these products, which included heated cigarettes, heated tobacco, and in that one they've checked all the data. They say it's highly likely that it will reduce the cancers in the future. And I think I believe that, and I think the data is there.